When Jesus gets up from his Passover meal, he knows what's next. He knows he's been betrayed, and he knows he'll now be tried by the very institutions he's come to overthrow, the empire and its religious collaborators. His friends are about to watch their hero be brutally murdered. Given what he knows, what Jesus says is astonishing. My peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. The thing he wants them to remember, to hold in the front of their mind as they watch him die, is peace. What must they have thought he meant? Here's the Prince of Peace, promising once and for all the very thing we all desire, peace. Could there be anything better than that? Individual tranquility combined with social equanimity and concord. They don't foresee what's coming. Who knows what they must have imagined he meant? To the reader, though, the context makes this statement paradoxical, that what Jesus wants his disciples to remember as they watch his execution is peace. It's especially strange since it's precisely this message that got Jesus into trouble in the first place, for announcing the arrival of his kingdom of peace. The disciples' minds might have hearkened back to Jesus' great sermon. He'd spoken about peace then. They might have remembered this funny thing he'd said, that peace is made. It isn't the default. It isn't nature's natural state. It doesn't obtain on its own. Peace is the result of concrete action. It's made. Perhaps they recalled today's text as they went out the door towards Gethsemane. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called huioi Theou, sons of God. Over the past weeks, we've been tracking this idea that Jesus' gospel is about the foundation of a new society, the kingdom of heaven, which realizes God's messianic promise for God's people finally to live with God as their king. That kingdom has a culture, a set of customs, values, and behaviors. And what that culture promises is happiness, makarios, sort of flourishing, or the possibility that individuals and the whole human community could be all that we can be. That's what the Sermon on the Mount describes. We've been considering at least two practices that have to do with peace. In all that you do, he says first, insofar as you're able, act towards others in a way that's righteous, that shows justice, that gives to others their due as children made and loved by their Heavenly Father, which includes things like respect, care, hospitality, friendship, material support. In short, love others as you love yourself. And when things go wrong, which they will, when people fail you, Jesus counsels mercy. Don't demand recompense. Don't insist on punitive measures. Instead, release each other from your debts so that you can go forward without the residue of hard feelings, on good terms with each other. That's a hard word, but it's how God treats us. Be righteous, be merciful. Such things promote peace. They're its preconditions. Now Jesus adds something else. Make peace. If you want to be counted among God's children, he says, the key is peace. Now, what might that mean? Much of what Jesus says over the rest of Matthew 5 explains what he has in mind. Let me offer a few observations. First, peacemaking consists, at the very least, in making amends. The issue here concerns not other people's failures towards us, but instances where you and I fail, where someone has something against us. Jesus is unambiguous in such situations. He expects us to seek reconciliation, not just coming to an arrangement or an agreement or drawing a line under it, but renewing and repairing the relationship. Have you failed a friend? Fell short on some commitment? Have you spoken ill of someone or left a disagreement unresolved? Hurt someone's feelings? Acted inconsiderately? Been selfish or caused some kind of harm? It's your responsibility to acknowledge it, to own up to it, to take responsibility for it, and to do what's needed to make things right. In fact, says Jesus, you should treat this with huge urgency. He puts it like this. If you're offering your gift to God and you remember that someone has something against you, leave your gift there. First, go and be reconciled, and then come and offer your gift. Deciphered, that means you are not welcome to stand before your Maker until you've tried to make peace. Don't pray, don't bring other offerings or other acts of service, don't sing words of praise and worship. God doesn't want to hear from you until you've done what you can to restore right relations. He thinks it's that important. Let's not overlook that making peace asks something of us that's really hard. You have to look at your failures. You have to acknowledge them. You have to weigh them, take the measure of them. Not only that, you have to go towards them and revisit them and correct them. That's hard. Who wants to do that? Easier, really, just to let things simmer, sleep on it, contextualize it, chalk it up to different values or different expectations. Let bygones be bygones. But Jesus takes a hard line here. The consequence of leaving things unaddressed is not just that you're unwelcome before your Father in heaven. It's also that God will expect you to repay in full the cost of your wrongdoings, which suggests you can't be forgiven by God until you've sought forgiveness from others. He expresses the idea like this. Your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown in prison. And I'm telling you the truth, you won't get out until you've paid the last penny. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but it doesn't sound very good. Point being, if the Prince of Peace is your king, you're required not only to attend to the areas of conflict in your life, but to address their causes too, which are in you, your attitudes, your values, your ideas, aspirations, and interests that set you in opposition to others. And this inward-looking, self-examining dimension of peacemaking relates to something else, Jesus says. It has to do with the posture we adopt towards our neighbors, to our enemies, whoever they may be. It's not just that we need to fess up when we misbehave. He asks us also to take on the sort of attitude that means that no one is our enemy. The idea connects up with this idea of being children of God. He expresses the idea like this. You've heard it said, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. There it is. Who causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Jesus' point is that being children of God, being peacemakers, entails something about the way we relate to each other, especially those who antagonize us, or act maliciously towards us, or undermine our good. As God's children, we're called to behave like our Father, who doesn't allow antagonism to change his disposition towards us. God always acts benevolently, even to those who make themselves his enemies. That's the call of the peacemaker, to live insofar as it's possible, without hard feelings, not keeping track of one another's wrongs, not regarding others as adversaries, but mirroring the unconditional acceptance of God, who loves even those who set themselves up against him. That seems like a huge ask, and without God's transforming grace, it seems frankly improbable, even for the best of us. But it's worth pondering what might result if we all, by grace, but as a matter of necessity, made it our policy, not only to maintain right relations, but to confront the origins of our antipathy, and to be transformed into the likeness of the one who loves even his enemies. What if we put that kind of priority on it, that without making peace, our worship and our prayer would be unwelcome before God? Imagine what kind of community would result. Anticipating the imminent face-off with his enemies, Jesus gets up from dinner and speaks peace. Over the next hours, he models peace, not instigating a riot at his arrest, not calling down angels to defend him, but acting peaceably, even in the face of persecution. What no one knew, except Jesus, probably, was that God's peace can't be stopped, because God's peace is transformational. It transforms the world. It continued despite his crucifixion, and it continues today. Perhaps you have some peace to make today. Don't hesitate. Do it now. See you next time.